Nicole Kidman filed for divorce from her husband of 19 years.
After nearly 2 decades of being Hollywood's golden couple, the fairy tale between Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban has come crashing down, and the truth behind their breakup is far more explosive than anyone imagined. They were the couple who seemed untouchable, dazzling on red carpets, showering each other with public affection, and proving that real love could survive the chaos of fame. But when Nicole walked into court to file for divorce, that picture-perfect illusion shattered, and what spilled out wasn't just heartbreak, but a storm of hidden pain, quiet resentment, and battles they had spent years hiding from the public eye. Keith responded with raw, emotional performances that exposed more than any statement ever could, while Nicole stood in unshakable silence, letting her actions speak volumes. This wasn't just the end of a marriage, it was the unraveling of a love story built on sacrifice, scars, and secrets too heavy to carry. And to truly understand how one of Hollywood's most iconic romances fell apart, we have to rewind to the very beginning. Before Nicole Kidman became one of Hollywood's most powerful actresses, she was just a shy, red-haired girl trying to find her voice. Born in Honolulu in 1967, to Australian parents, a psychologist father, and a nurse mother, Nicole grew up surrounded by both discipline and creativity. When her family returned to Sydney, she was painfully shy, so much so that teachers recalled how she froze when asked to speak in class. But that same quiet girl discovered an escape through ballet, drama lessons, and community theater, where she could express emotions words couldn't capture. Acting quickly became more than a hobby, it became her identity. By her teens, her raw talent was undeniable. Nicole took every role she could get, and at just 16, she starred in the 1983 cult hit BMX Bandits. Her striking presence and natural talent caught Hollywood's eye, and soon she was being pulled into a world she had only dreamed of. Yet, fame brought new challenges. The girl who once feared speaking in public was suddenly under the global spotlight, balancing ambition with vulnerability. But no matter how far her star rose, one thing never changed: Nicole's longing for love, family, and a place where she truly belonged. And that search would soon lead her into a relationship that would bring both glamour and heartbreak. Because before Keith Urban, another man had already changed her life. By the late 1980 seconds, Nicole Kidman's career was skyrocketing, and that's when she crossed paths with Tom Cruise, one of the biggest stars in the world. Their chemistry was instant, and in 1990, they married, quickly becoming Hollywood's ultimate power couple. To the outside world, they were young, glamorous, and unstoppable. For Nicole, who had once struggled with self-doubt, being with Tom felt like stepping into a dream. But behind the fairy tale image, their marriage was far more complicated. Tom's deep involvement with Scientology loomed large over their relationship, creating pressure Nicole rarely spoke about publicly. The greatest heartbreak, however, came after their split in 2001. The couple had adopted 2 children, Isabella and Connor, but after the divorce, they primarily lived with Tom, leaving Nicole heartbroken and distant from the family she had longed for. The end of that marriage was more than just a breakup, it was a defining trauma. Nicole carried herself with grace in public, but the scars shaped how she viewed love, family, and resilience. And when Keith Urban entered her life years later, she was determined to rebuild the dream she had lost. Those wounds from the past explain why their connection felt so intense and why she held on to it so tightly. Keith Lionel Urban's story began far from Hollywood glamour. Born in New Zealand in 1967 and raised in Queensland, Australia, Keith grew up surrounded by country music thanks to his father, who ran a small shop but loved the genre deeply. By age 6, Keith was already playing guitar and performing at local shows. Music quickly became both his escape and his purpose. But life at home wasn't always easy. Financial struggles and family tensions pushed Keith to pour everything into music, dropping out of school to chase his dream with no backup plan. That gamble paid off when his 1,999 self-titled album made him one of country music's hottest new stars. Yet fame came with demons. By his 20s, Keith was battling alcohol and substance abuse battles that would haunt him even at the height of success. By the time he met Nicole in 2005, Keith had already been in and out of rehab. On stage, he was magnetic. behind the scenes, he was fighting for control of his life. And it was that vulnerability, the pain beneath the spotlight, that drew Nicole to him. They were two wounded souls searching for healing in each other. But that same mix of passion and fragility would later plant the seeds of their heartbreak. By the early 2000s, Nicole Kidman had rebuilt her life after the heartbreak of her divorce from Tom Cruise. She had won an Oscar, regained her confidence, and was ready to open her heart again. Keith Urban, meanwhile, was rising fast in Nashville, earning fame with his emotional songs, but still battling fears that his struggles with sobriety could destroy everything. Both were at crossroads, and fate brought them together. Their paths crossed at the G'day USA Gala in Los Angeles in January 2005. Nicole was poised and radiant. Keith was charming yet reserved. He took her number but didn't call for months. Something Nicole later admitted made her think he wasn't interested. But when he finally reached out, their connection was instant. Their romance moved quickly, and by the end of the year, Nicole described him as the man who had swept her off her feet. Keith was everything Tom hadn't been: raw, passionate, and unfiltered. Nicole offered elegance and stability, while Keith brought authenticity and emotion. Their relationship felt like a second chance at happiness, a union of two broken hearts hoping to heal together. And by mid-2006, they were ready to turn that love into something permanent. On the 25th of June, 2006, Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban turned their whirlwind romance into a real-life fairy tale. They married in a breathtaking candlelit ceremony at the Cardinal Soretti Memorial Chapel in Sydney, surrounded by family, Hollywood stars, and country music royalty. Nicole walked down the aisle in a stunning Balenciaga gown, and Keith serenaded her at the reception, a deeply personal moment that melted hearts and captured headlines around the world. For fans, their union symbolized hope. Two people scarred by pain had found healing in each other. Nicole, who had endured heartbreak and separation from her children, seemed at peace. Keith, who had battled addiction and self-doubt, looked grounded and complete. Together, they became the golden couple, proof that love could conquer anything. But reality would soon test that belief. Just 4 months later, Keith checked himself into rehab for alcohol abuse, shattering the fairy tale image they had carefully built. It was the first public crack in their story, and a sign that love alone might not be enough to hold everything together. Just 4 months after their dream wedding, reality hit hard. In October 2006, Keith Urban voluntarily checked himself into rehab for alcohol abuse. For many couples, such a blow so soon after saying "I do" might have been the end. But for Nicole, it was a test of loyalty, one she refused to fail. She stood by his side, visited him during treatment, and shielded their private struggles from public view. Keith later credited Nicole with saving his life, calling her support the anchor that kept him grounded. But beneath the surface, their dynamic was shifting. Nicole, who had been unable to save her marriage to Tom Cruise, threw herself into the role of healer once again, determined to hold her new family together. Keith, meanwhile, carried the weight of being the one who needed saving. For a while, their bond grew stronger in the public eye, a story of love surviving hardship. But privately, a deeper imbalance had begun, one that neither of them fully understood. And as they returned to their careers and built a family, the challenges of fame, distance, and parenthood would test their marriage even further. In the years after Keith's rehab stay, Nicole and Keith fought hard to rebuild their lives. Outwardly, they seemed unstoppable. Nicole was conquering Hollywood with acclaimed roles, while Keith was selling out arenas and winning Grammys. On red carpets, they appeared deeply in love, often speaking about how much they meant to each other. But behind the smiles, the pressures of fame and family were taking a toll. Their careers kept them apart for long stretches. Nicole filmed around the world, and Keith was constantly on tour. They tried to set rules to limit the time away from each other, but conflicting schedules made it difficult. When their daughters, Sunday, Rose, and Faith Margaret, were born in 2008 and 2010, Nicole devoted herself to motherhood, determined not to repeat the painful separation she'd experienced with her adopted children after her divorce from Tom Cruise. Keith loved being a father, but struggled to balance family life with the restless demands of a musician's career. Nicole thrived on structure and routine, while Keith leaned into spontaneity, and those differences often clashed. In public, They still looked like the perfect family, but behind the scenes, their marriage had quietly become a constant negotiation between distance and closeness, duty and freedom. And those growing tensions were slowly laying the groundwork for deeper cracks ahead. Through the late 2000s and 2010 seconds, Nicole and Keith perfected the image of Hollywood's most enduring couple. They walked red carpets hand in hand, delivered emotional speeches about each other, and posed for picture-perfect family photos. Fans saw them as living proof that real love could survive fame, distance, and addiction. But behind the spotlight, their reality was far more complicated. The same differences that once drew them together were now quietly pulling them apart. Nicole, shaped by past heartbreak, craved structure and stability. Keith, fueled by creativity and restlessness, longed for freedom and spontaneity. Their push and pull dynamic created emotional tension. Nicole sometimes felt she was carrying the weight of the marriage, while Keith struggled with always being seen as the one who needed saving. Parenting highlighted those differences even more. Nicole preferred rules and consistency, determined to protect their daughters from the chaos of fame. Keith played the fun, easygoing dad, which sometimes left Nicole feeling undermined and Keith feeling criticized. Yet, none of this was visible to the public. On stage and on red carpets, they remained the golden couple. But as the years passed, those quiet cracks grew harder to hide, and by the mid-2010 seconds, rumors began swirling that the perfect love story might not be as perfect as it seemed. By the mid-2010 seconds, the cracks in Nicole and Keith's marriage were no longer invisible. Tabloids buzzed with rumors about clashing schedules, Keith's partying, and Nicole's intense personality. Photos of them attending events separately and whispers of growing distance fueled speculation that their relationship was in trouble. Yet every time the headlines appeared, they pushed back with a united front. Nicole calmly told interviewers, "We've never been stronger," while Keith repeatedly called her the love of his life. On red carpets, they held hands tightly and smiled for cameras, determined to prove the doubters wrong. And for a while, it worked. Fans believed in the fairy tale. But behind the scenes, friends noticed changes. Nicole seemed weary, tired of always being the stabilizing force, while Keith bristled at being portrayed as the one who needed saving. Even their public declarations began to feel rehearsed rather than heartfelt. They weren't faking their love, they were fighting to keep the illusion alive. By 2023 and 2024, rumors reached a peak. Reports claimed they were living separate lives, and solo appearances only deepened public suspicion. Still, they denied everything, insisting they were solid. But by 2025, the truth could no longer be hidden, and the story that had captivated fans for nearly 2 decades was about to reach its breaking point. In the end, the story of Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban isn't just about a marriage that ended, it's about everything their journey revealed along the way. For nearly 20 years, they were held up as proof that love could survive fame, addiction, distance, and heartbreak. And for a long time, it looked like they had done the impossible. But behind the smiles and red carpet moments were 2 people shaped by pain, each trying to heal the other while carrying their own scars. Nicole, deeply affected by the loss of her children after her first marriage, longed for stability and family. Keith, wrestling with addiction and a restless spirit, searched for freedom and balance. Their love was real, but so were their contradictions. Over time, those differences became too heavy to carry. Their divorce papers cited irreconcilable differences, but the truth was far more complex. It wasn't one scandal or one argument, it was years of imbalance, sacrifice, and quiet compromise that finally reached a breaking point. What makes their story powerful isn't the breakup itself, but how they faced it. Keith turned his heartbreak into music, bearing his soul on stage, while Nicole responded with quiet resilience, focusing on her daughters and moving forward with dignity. Their story is a reminder that even the brightest stars are still human. Behind the glamour and perfection, they grapple with the same struggles as anyone else: love, loss, and the search for balance. And sometimes, even the deepest love stories don't end with happily ever after. Sometimes, they end with the quiet understanding that love, no matter how strong, isn't always enough to last forever.